When you open up Illustrator and using it for the first time, you should have a window that opens up like this. You're not going to have the documents in the background, okay? This is kind of the starting point, all right? Here you can kind of give the project a name, okay? If you are making a project, and it's something that you're going to be turning in for a class, where you're going to be submitting the Illustrator file for the class, or a PDF, or a PNG of the file, what I want you to do, and this is going to be, unless you hear information from another instructor at the school, alternatively, is your base step should be to put your last name on there, your first name on there, and the project name. All right? And what this is going to do is that when you save it, it's not going to be saved as Untitled 1. And then you submit that as Untitled 1, either onto MyCIA or onto Google Drive, or you send it by email, depending it is. And I have no idea who Untitled 1 is, but it's the student with the most names in this school, right? Because it's the first one, or it's Untitled 17, right? Based on the number of documents you have open. So if you can get in the habit of putting your name, it doesn't have to have the project, just your name on there is the first part, right? But then also, this is because you're going to take digital classes this semester and next semester, right? And you're going to have to submit things, right? In some capacity. And students, and then when you're searching for things, and you use, like, I know it's called Untitled, and you just go within the search box of the Windows File Explorer, what's the one in Mac called, where you search the files. You search Untitled, so you can get like 57 of them. And which of the 57 Untitles is it? Okay. So put your name in there, give it some kind of description. You might have to put something like 01 on there too, right? Because you can make multiple files. Okay. They have base file sizes here. Okay. Letter, tabloid, letter, 9x6, 34632. For this sake, it doesn't matter which one we use. We're going to choose letter. You can choose a different one if you want. You could also put in your own custom width and height if you're working on a project you want to be square format because you want to post it on Instagram. You want to have that square-based format. You can do that. You can alter orientation if you want it to be vertical or horizontal. Doesn't matter. Artboards. Artboards are pieces of paper, right? The piece of paper which you're going to be drawing on. Typically the base is just one, right? But if you're making something where you're going to have a spread and multiple images on there, you're going to want multiple artboards. I use it as an idea development where I start with one artboard and I sort of popping more on there, and I have ones at different sizes based on the end output of the project. It doesn't matter as to what you have. You can start with one. I'll show you how to add more, okay? Bleed, for this sake, is not something we need to do. Bleed deals with setting up images that be printed on a card, right? If I make my artboard exactly this size, and I bring the images all the way up to this size, when it goes through the printer and they cut it, it's not always registered correctly, and it might be cut a little bit off by a millimeter here, and you'll see a white border down there. A bleed makes you takes it on there, let's say 1/4 of an inch or so, depending on how you size it, and then you bring your image all the way out to that full size, and so then even if it cuts a little bit off, like I can see this one is off by like 1/2 millimeter, there's no evidence of the white border, that white artboard, right? Or the white piece of paper in that regard, the postcard, right? So that's what the bleed is going to do. But for our sake, we're gonna skip that because this is going to be a laser cut output. All right, so I'm going to do portrait size, a letter size image, and click create. Okay, and so this is my artboard right here. Okay, on the top I have a file menu. You can see all your saves and copies and stuff are under edits there. Objects. If you have shapes in here, you can start editing by going down to each one of these kind of little selections here. Windows is going to give you additional options. So on the right side, I'm blanking as to what these are called. Can I move that? These tools are called, and they're all based on images. If it's not out here, then it will be down here. Okay. Your workspace, which is this whole kind of like visual image you have right here, is probably wait a second. I need to. It's probably Essentials, which I'm not going to click to because I have this is based on my preferences for tools that I use regularly. I haven't saved it, which I should do. So if you set up your toolbar and you like a lot, which I'm going to do right now, you can save the workspace. And so I'm going to call it New Workspace. I'm going to call it Gauss. I'm going to click OK. And now, if I go to Window, to show you what you're looking at, which is this the base window for when you first open up? For the layout, right? So you just have a few different options here. That's fine, right? So you can set up it customize it for your own preferences, right? The arrows are really small, but in the upper right hand corner there's two little arrows right here. And so I can click that, and that'll reduce that, right? So now I have a little bit more workspace. We all have laptops on here. They range from itty bitty little tablet size to maybe at most 15 inches in terms of the diagonal. And so we're still limited. It's not the 27-inch iMacs in terms of being able to lay out multiple documents side by side. And so in my opinion, it's nice to kind of give yourself as much image or much image space to work with. And so you can have this expand out. You can bring it, pin it back out, unpin it. So this is a pin, this is an unpin. You can also change the width, and you can bring that down to just the icons for the tools themselves. Okay, and then that'll allow you to zoom in and zoom out and have a further width. You have additional tools here on the left. You have your selection tools and your pen tools and all those things. I'm not going to go too in depth on that. I'm going to kind of focus some of the instruction based on how to utilize it for this project. But we're going to use the selection tool, the direct selection tool, the pen tool, maybe the cutting tool, the shape tool, and some other tools in here as well too, as well as the fill and the stroke colors. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pull this back out here. I wish that wasn't right there. Okay. All right. So what I would describe Illustrator is a management of shapes, lines, and fills. Okay. So it's about drawing a shape, giving it a line, and filling it in. Okay. Illustrator is working in a vector format as opposed to a raster image, which is Photoshop is. Raster is easier for students to comprehend because it's based on every other image that you see digitally, right? So it's based on small pixels. Raster equals pixels, okay? Is anybody not familiar with the difference between a raster and a vector image? Okay? So I'm going to pinpoint this to you since you're the only one brave enough to raise your hand. A pixel, you know, understand, right? It's different hues layered next to each other with different values on there, and depending on how extreme those values are, depends on the contrast, right? Something between white and black, you're going to see a hard contrast. But if you see a gradient, it's going to look like it's kind of like the shadow of an arm, right? And so you can zoom, if you zoom all the way in Photoshop, which I don't have the program open, you can actually see the pictures. And you can zoom out, and it looks like a picture of you sitting in front of me, or a picture of me. A vector image is a path, or a line equals path, or path equals line, in which there's a mathematical algorithm that determines the line and the shape, right? And what that algorithm does is it allows it to be infinitely scalable and limits the size, right? So in a raster-based image, if I wanted to print out something the size of one of those boards right there, and have it be at a resolution of 360 pixels per inch, that'd be a pretty massive file, right? Based on experience, we know that it's 8 gigabytes in size, right? And so that bogs down your computer. With a vector image, you're able to take this information, and the information is smaller. And so I can take an image this size, and I can scale it to that size without impacting the size of the file. All right, and if you I don't think this is going to be an example on here. This is all printed with a vector-based line in the card. You can tell I'm saying that because if I look at the card, there's no fuzziness on the letters. If you've seen postcards before where there's a little, it just doesn't look quite as crisp, it's because they designed it in Photoshop. And so the letters are going to be based, it's all based on the pixels, where this is based on the vector, so they can scale this in and out. So here, right here, that's a vector image. I can tell that the quality is poor, right? And so, I mean, that's actually a magazine, not a sticker. But anyways, even that one right there, right? As opposed to that text right there is a vector text, and that's a raster image, right? I can see that in terms of the quality of the line. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. All right, so the difference, one of the main differences between Photoshop and Illustrator's Photo is a raster-based operating or program, and Illustrator's vector-based program, okay? And they both have their advantages and their disadvantages, right? Probably better color application in Photoshop if you want to talk about a cool range of colors and really kind of showing that, but much more graphic capabilities in Illustrator. And then, of course, it has an output of being able to kind of be infinitely scalable or being better incorporated with the laser cutters. Okay, let me drink some water. Am I talking too fast? Not yet.
Not faster, actually. You're talking too slow.
As fast as I go.
Come on, speed read.
Oh, I'm a really slow reader.
Talk fast enough, you can nose it through the floor and then get to the final boss.
All right, so for your project, you guys are creating an image or an outline of an image that's going to incorporate into this park downtown, correct? And then we're going to be taking that image and you have it in a sketch form. We're going to translate that onto the computer in Illustrator, and we're going to create an outline. And you're going to take that outline and we're going to send it to the laser color, the ink box, and it's going to cut it out, right? And some additional components within the project you can do for your choosing is either you keep it the wood color, but that wood color should relate to the environment itself. You can paint your 2D cutout a solid color. You can paint it a rendered image like those little ducklings we saw. Or you can have an image etched into the surface using the capabilities of the laser cutter, like the unicycle we saw. I know I showed you that slideshow pretty quickly, right? Does everybody remember the unicycle? So that had detailed information of all the components within the unicycle itself. The image of the unicycle, as it's printed in there, that was actually a raster-based image, a pixel-based image that's incorporated within the design. The laser cutter can differentiate between a laser or a vector line and a raster image, and that's accordingly based on it. And so it's how you tell it based on some information, and that's setting things up in the think box. For the sake of the demonstration today, I'm going to show you how to make a cutout. Okay? If you want to incorporate that raster image into your design, I'll talk to you more about that one-on-one as opposed to a larger class. Okay? All right, so the first thing I want to do was to show you how to make a shape in Illustrator. Okay? So I'm going to use this rectangle tool right here. And it says it's called rectangle tool because when you hover over it says rectangle tool. All right? You can also pay attention to the fact that when I hover over the tool, and not only that, but in the parentheses it has a letter M in there. That's the keyboard shortcut. Memorizing those keyboard shortcuts will make access and use of Illustrator infinitely more efficient. Okay, if you remember those. I'd never remember the rectangle ones, but I know some of the keyboard shortcuts for a number of other tools. Okay, and so what that means is if when I'm hovering the space, if I press the letter M, it automatically switches to that tool, and I know that because it has this kind of cross shape in there. Okay, I know this. I don't know how to make my cursor bigger, but that's what it looks like. Okay, so it's kind of like a implied line cross kind of thing. All right. Now to use the rectangle tool, if I click there, that's where my top left corner of the rectangle is going to start, and then I get an opportunity to put in a width or a height. Okay. So I can go ahead and change that to 2. I'm going to make it a square. Backspace 2, and I can click OK. All right, now I have a shape, a square with 2 inches by 2 inches. All right, if I repeat that, and I click again, and I choose to click this button, I could change the scale of that. So this is going to constrain the proportions. You notice at first it was crossed off. I'm not sure if that's the default or it was my own personal setting. And it was crossed off, meaning that whatever size I put, it just changed to the size. If I do the constraint on there and I type in 4 up here, you'll notice that the height changes at 4 too. So if you have a ratio you're trying to maintain based on your shapes, this is a constrained proportion icon for that. And I click OK, and I get a larger 2 inch by 2 inch shape. Alternatively, if I click and hold, I can pull out here. Okay? And you can see then this is where I'm able to kind of make whatever shape I want, and I can kind of see it live in the space right there. You notice that there's a pink diagonal line pops up. That's a constraining proportions, right? So now that is a square. And it's saying it's at 2.38 by 2.38. If you're trying to make a square and you don't want it to be based on where you type in the values themselves, if you press the shift key, it's going to lock it into that shape right there. And I'm still holding down on the cursor with my mouse, and as well as the shift key at the same time. Let go, and I have that shape. Okay? And you can kind of preview the size because it gives you a value and the width and the height there. And the bottom, they're small on the screen right there, but this is like 1.3 inches or something like that. Okay? So that's how you make a square. I'm going to go back to the selection tool. Right? So this is the selection tool up here, or the V key on the keyboard. I click on that, and now I have this black arrow. The black arrow is the one we're going to start with. That allows me to select an object, click and move it around, hover over a corner, an anchor point on the corner, where I can see 2 arrows now. I can rotate that. Okay? And I can adjust the scale by clicking one of the anchor points on the side. Okay, and that's changing the proportion so long it's no longer square. If I press Control Z, I can go back. That's undo. Control Shift Z is redo. So, but I want to get back to where it was a square here. If I'm changing the scale of it here, I can change the scale. And if I hold the Shift key, it'll constrain those proportions, so I can kind of keep that square format. Okay, and then there's these cute little buttons right here in the upper right hand corner, and what that is it's going to give me a rounded edge, rounded corner. So I click on that and I pull it out. You can see I get a nice perfect radius on there. And so if you want to make a shape that's more of a radius, or maybe 2 sides of this card, let's call it like that, but you want the other one to be these still 90-degree angles, you can do that. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is color and outline. All right, so this is not so much necessary for this project, but if you're in digital color, you've probably been taught this by now, or you're going to take the next half the semester, and it's going to be incorporated into that class. So on the left panel right here, this black line indicates the stroke. The stroke being kind of this outline of this square right here. That's that black line. This one represents the fill. That's the interior fill. A good relationship, this is the paint bucket tool in Photoshop. Okay? But in Photoshop, I don't use it that much, I have to remember. I believe you have to be on the correct layer. You have to choose the paint bucket tool and the color. And then you have to find that shape. You have to click on there and it fills the space. Is that correct? Somebody agreed with me, or I kind of like that. I haven't done it in a while because I resort back to Illustrator. In Illustrator, I can select the shape, and I know it's selected because it's highlighted blue. And if I double-click on this, I'll get the spectrum here. I can choose a color on this scroll bar here, and I can select there, and I click OK. And it fills in that color right there. All right, so it's a couple less steps to kind of have to manage. Okay. And so that's how you manage the color. Inversely, if you want to change the color of the stroke, you'll know which one you have selected because it'll be sitting on this area right here. It'll be sitting on top. So I know its stroke is selected because the stroke is sitting on top of the fill. In this case, I know the fill is selected because it's sitting on top of the stroke. Okay? I can select the stroke right there. And then if I come over to here, I don't have it right there. So I'm going to go, I don't have my toolbar over here, so I'm going to go to Window, and then scroll down to Swatches. I'm going to select on that. And this window pops up. Okay? Now I can go ahead and I'm going to choose a pink color, right? Because we all like pink. And so I can kind of see that there's an outline of the stroke right there on the outside right there, but it's kind of hard to see, right? So from a visual standpoint, if you want to be able to see that color, then what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to find the stroke fill bar. Is there not any way to move this thing? Sorry. So I'm going to go down to here and I'm going to choose stroke. All right, and I have this right here, and this is the stroke bar. And so I can change the weight of this line. So it's thicker, okay? Or thinner by clicking the up, down arrow, down arrow. I'm going to change the setting I have on my computer right now for you guys. So your default one is probably going to have the stroke in points. And so I'm going to click OK. So now if I scroll down, it's going to be on a numerical point scale as opposed to an inch increment, okay? Because I use this program a lot, I have different settings set up at any different time. So I have to, for the sake of demo, I have to alter things. And so that's how you can change the width of the stroke on that line right there for your drawing. Okay. Now, if you notice, I'm starting to get a bunch of windows that pop up here, and they're encroaching, they're invading my visual artboard. There's my visual space right here. All right. So a couple things you can do. You can minimize that to make it smaller. You can make it bigger. You can also usually change the scale of that if you want to, depending on how small it goes. Or I can take this and I can drag and drop it onto here. If these are tools that I'm going to use more regularly, and they can pop it up on there, right? And then you have these different tools on there. And then, of course, you can also minimize this way, in which case you have to memorize what those little icons mean in relation to their tool. Okay? Now, for the sake of this project, having a stroke color is unimportant. It doesn't matter, right? Because the laser cutter is not going to differentiate between the blue and the pink, or the green and the pink, whatever you want to call it color. It's only going to look at this blue line, and that's the line it's going to cut out. Okay? That's the vector line. And so it's not going to see anything else, and you're just going to get this kind of slightly radius square shape that's going to print it out, right? And that might be exactly what you want. But it's not going to see colors. It's not going to see stroke colors. It's not going to see fill colors, right? This is just how to use those ones. Okay? So if you're laying things out, keep that in mind, right? You might color it in anyways because you want to have a map or an outline that you want to color when you paint, when you apply your own paints, right? Which is a cheat if you want, because if you have different shapes inside of here, and you have these all merged in there, you can have it set up so it can do a vector etch. So it'll follow the vector path, but only cut into the surface maybe a millimeter or less than that, right? And then you can use that as a stencil guide, so when you go to paint, you know where to keep the paint, as long as you know how to paint inside lines and not over and outside them, right? Otherwise, it's pointless to participate in that process, all right? Additionally, we'll get to that in a minute. The next thing is in different shapes here. You have the rounded rectangle tool. So that is essentially going to allow me to shift, click, hold. It's going to create a rounded tool. And if I press the up arrow, it's going to increase the diameter or the radius on that. If I press the down arrow, it's going to make it more pointy, or all the way back down to a square. So you guys can see the difference between the two. It's a rounded rectangle tool. You have shapes tool, the ellipse tool, click, hold, or I can make it look like a tall mirror, like mirror on the wall. Or I can go ahead and press the shift key and I can make it into a perfect circle. It's going to constrain the proportions. If I'm drawing a circle and I want to draw it, you'll notice that I start here, it starts in the upper left hand corner and it goes down. But if I want that to start in the center, if I press Alt, now all of a sudden it's going the center out like that. You see the difference between that, where it's starting and originating, and that, and how it's increasing on the radius or the diameter, okay? And that's the difference of pressing either, on a Mac it would be the Option key, and then on a PC it would be Alt key, and then combining that with the Shift key constrains proportions. If I just hold the Alt key or Option key, you can see that it kind of changes the proportions, but it is still basing on the center of that, okay? So that comes into play sometimes, all right? I'm going to go ahead and just change the color of this real quick, so we can kind of see a few different things in a minute, all right? Scroll back down here, Polygon tool. This is if you need a triangle. You're going to get this shape right here. You press the up arrow, it increases the facets on there. Press the down arrow, it decreases the facets all the way down to 3, which is the minimum, because anything less than that is just a straight path, right? If I press the shift key, it's going to lock it, so it kind of comes out here, and so it's an equilateral triangle. And I press the shift alt key, it's going to do it based on the center there, and so it locks it into that space right there. And so that's, if you want a polygon like that, you can adjust it that way. And then lastly, you have the star tool. I never use the flare tool, actually not even sure what it is. But if I click and hold on that, I can get the 5-point star. Up arrow increases the points, down arrow decreases, and it goes all the way back down to a triangle 2. So there's 2 different ways to get an equilateral triangle. So you can kind of create a shape like that. I'm press the V key, I can click on it, I can move these shapes around right here like that. Okay, very exciting. But you'll notice that because I drew this star after that shape, it's in front of it. All right. And the one big difference also between Illustrator and Photoshop is in Photoshop we use layers as a way to kind of differentiate between different spaces. And I think of layers in Photoshop as being like transparent pieces of paper, transparencies. You can kind of stack things like X-rays, and you can kind of see how things move, and then you can kind of change the order of that, and you take that, you can duplicate that, you can delete it, you can alter values within there. In Illustrator, it's not as necessary to use layers in that same capacity. You can use it in ways to kind of turn things on and off, but it's not quite as isolated as it is in Photoshop, where you're really kind of stuck within there. And if you alter something in a layer in Photoshop, it's kind of hard to kind of undo that. And in Illustrator, it's a little more universal. I'm going to go in and click this tool, which is the Layers tool. I'm going to see all my layers popped out here now. All right. I'm going to drop this drop-down arrow right here, and now I have these different layers in here. Now, if I want to take this star and I want to move it behind it, I can move it down to there. You'll see that it's behind that space, right? Now it's behind there if you're trying to organize things within a space, which is unimportant for this project, but is just how they feel with Illustrator.
So if you do that with something like that shape, the square or no?
So for the sake of this project, if this is your design, you need to rework it because it sucks, okay? But yeah, it's going to recognize all of the vector paths regardless of what's in there, and it's going to cut it out, and you're going to have this weird puzzle thing, okay? I'll get to how to make it into a unified shape in a few minutes. Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay. An alternate way to kind of navigate space in here is if you go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, Shift-J, right bracket, which is up next to the P. There's a left bracket and there's a right bracket. You can click on that, and it'll bring it to the front. So you got, what did I say? Shift, Shift-J. That's not what it was. What were the keyboards? I think it was Control-Shift. Shift-Control, left bracket. Shift-Control, left bracket will bring it to the front. Shift-Control, right bracket. Or you got to select the object, and then you got to send it to the back or the front. So you sends it all the way to the back, sends the front, or you just press Shift. I think it's just Shift. No, Control. Which one is it? There you go. And you can kind of slowly bring it back up into space or send it back into space. So if you're trying to layer objects for the sake of design for your digital color class, you can press that as a way to kind of organize the space. And additionally, you can turn them on and off without deleting them by clicking these eyes under your layer panel. Okay. And if you're doing layers, you can add additional layers here. And you can stack information, and you can kind of navigate kind of the visual space that way. I do it from an organizational standpoint in terms of naming layers, as you should always do, and then kind of organizing different ideas into one. But for the sake of this project, probably a single layer is fine. Okay. The next step is, what was the next step? Oh, I'll talk about the pen tool, and then I'll talk about merging them all into one unified shape. The pen tool does not write. So, 5 years ago, I didn't know how to use Illustrator, right? And I was given a class that said, you need to teach Illustrator. Okay? And I opened up the program the way that most of you guys did, and I was like, this program sucks. I hate this program. And I played around with it, and I had to watch videos, and it's like, and I only ever used Photoshop for the 10 years prior to that, or 15 years prior to that, right? And so I only know new things based on the raster image, which is kind of like common knowledge. A lot of students come in with more of an understanding of Photoshop than they do Illustrator. And so I took the videos, and I was like, and I taught the class, like you guys are in the class, or maybe unlucky because you're still in my class, right? I struggled with it, I taught it, and then I realized, and this is where students will argue with me, Illustrator is a much better program, at least for my application, than Photoshop is. Okay? It allows me to produce things in a vector format, to visualize space a lot better, and kind of lay things out and have multiple artboards and kind of move things around than I am able to do in Photoshop. I don't remember what I was trying to get at. There was an actual point to that more than just a personal history thing. Other than to say, don't be so resistant to the program. Okay? What was my next step? Oh, the pen tool. That's what I was talking about. So when I first opened the pen tool, I wanted it to draw a line, like a gestural line, because it's a pen. It's in the shape of a quill pen, right? It's not that, right? There are other tools, and the pencil tool will draw with that. It's not the name of the tool that applies the function, it's what the function does, okay? So the pen tool is going to allow you to draw straight paths, aka lines, paths equals lines, or curved paths, okay? So I'm going to click once with the cursor, right? And I have this line that's going here, and that's a straight path. And so that's going to allow me to make a line here, 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 here. And all the colors are already determined because I have this color switched out. And even in the middle of the drawing, if I double click on this, I can change the hue. There we go, and you can see the color changes. Whoopee. All right, so I have this ambiguous shape right here, and I can go back to the beginning. I see a little circle next to the pen tool there, and it will close all the shapes. So now that's a closed form. All right. Additionally, if you click and hold and click, and then click and hold, I can get a curved path. And so now I have this arc that's being produced right here, right? And I can change kind of how it's kind of playing around in here. I can kind of pull it out right there if I want it to be all the way down there like that. And then it's going to, by default, it completes the arc, and so you can kind of complete the arc as you want. I can click on that, so it kind of looks like a whistle or Nike swoosh. All right. What's that? I don't know what that is, but okay. So if I make the same shape, but I don't want to complete the curve, I can click right here. I hover over it until I see a little a less than value sign, which you can't really see right there. But it's popping up in the bottom right hander of the pen tool. If I click on that, that'll resort it back to a straight path. Okay? You can make a curve right there. Okay? And so that's the pen tool. It's a way to draw straight paths and curved paths. Okay? And then you can kind of play with the shape in that regard. If I have this shape right here, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to press the letter V, which is the direct selection tool. I can select this shape now, I can move it around, but actually the shape I wanted to press was A. If I press A, that's going to be is the direct selection tool. The direct selection tool is nice because it allows me to kind of change the malleability of the forms, right? So no longer does it have to be locked into this form, but rather I can choose the white tool, and the white arrow will allow me to kind of move anchor points, right? So in this shape right here, if I hover over an anchor point being where two paths intersect, or two paths, one path ends and the other path begins, okay? I'm going to click on that. I can click and hold. I can change that like that. And I can click on this anchor point, and I can move them around. And I can take this anchor point, and I can actually close this form off, which I didn't do there. I can grab this handle. I can change that. And that's starting to look like something that I want to talk about. Delete that. If I press the V cool and I press delete, it's not quickly enough. All right, I can go back to the star here now with the A tool, the direct selection tool. If I click off of there, and so it's not highlighted, and then I want to go to the anchor point, I can start to pull out these if I want to make it look like a sun, and I can have, what are those, what are they called? Sunbeams or something like that? Can make it look more like a sun or like a star exploding in the sky, right? How cool is that? This is all somewhat important for this project, but it is useful in terms of Illustrator knowledge base. So that's how I'm able to move that. I can also click on the pen tool, click hold, and while I'm still holding, if I come all the way to this arrow right here, it'll bring actually the tool out to here. And I like that, and this is typically I have it here because a lot of times there's anchor points that I just don't want anymore, and I can press the -1 and I can delete them. Like they're just like, I don't know why they're there, but I like maybe this kind of faceted shape right there. Right there. So now I have this kind of shape right there. But then if I change my mind, I can press the arrow and I can actually add some more points onto there. And I press A, and I can start to manipulate that shape a little bit more. And I can play around a little bit, and it's starting to look like a turtle, right? And if we wanted to go patterning in there, we can actually make a pattern turtle with this weird tail in there and pointy feet. You guys probably, isn't there like some kind of like grenade character in Mario or something like that? Whatever. I'm trying to make a video game association. I don't know anything about video games. All right. So now I have all these shapes. For the sake of the vector laser cutter, it's just going to cut out these all in independent shapes, and it's going to cut out sections. So it'll cut out this shape, and then it'll cut out this shape, and you'll be stuck actually with one shape, this negative space of a shape, and a third shape right here. But let's just say this is your old design, because you're just rushing through this project, and I can see that in terms of the end output. And I want them to all be kind of just one kind of weird form, and the idea is it's supposed to be trash spilling out of one of those probably garbage cans you have there, right? And it's talking about litter pickup and pollution. Okay, so I want the program to kind of just cut all these out. All right, so I'm going to choose the direct selection tool, or the selection tool, sorry, which is letter V. I'm going to select everything, and then I'm going to come over to Pathfinder. I have to go to Window to find Pathfinder, and I'm going to take this. I'm just going to drag it onto here. And Pathfinder tool looks like two shapes that are overlapped and intersecting, two squares. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to choose this tool right here, and it's going to make it into one single shape right there. Okay, it's going to kind of just, that's your form right there, and I'm going to take that to the laser cutter, and it's going to cut out that shape, and then I'm going to say check the box. I'm going to take it to the site. I'm going to paint it. What color is that? That's looking mint green. It's blue on my. Is that blue on my screen? Am I crazy? Yeah. It's blue on my screen. It's pink on the projector. I'm going to paint it that color, and I'm going to be talking about how the relationship of the lake nearby and the pollution as it's coming out of the trash can ends up in the lake. You can create bullshit about anything, okay? And then how we're all impacting our natural environment if we're not thinking about it. All right, so that's one way you can create that. If I press Control Z, I can undo that. And I'm going to go ahead and take this shape right here, out of here, this shape right here. I'm going to just delete those. Press the delete key. I'm going to delete that one. I'm going to get back to, I'm going to go with this star. There. Nope, not that one. This one. And I'm going to change the scale of this by scrolling it down. And I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to put it right on top of that. Because what would happen if I want this shape, and then a cutout of this shape. And I could try to set it up like this, and I don't know if this will happen or not. So I'm going to give you a quick tool on how to do that, where I want that to be a negative space, because all of a sudden I want this to be something that I'm going to put on top of the light post. I want it to, and I paint one side, the top side doesn't matter, the bottom side I'm going to paint, get a reflective spray paint, and want to help reflect light down from these giant light posts that they have there. It's not dark or lighting up at nighttime, and so I want to make this piece that kind of talks about light and the way that the piece is interacting there, so we can kind of look up at the light and we can kind of see this. Maybe it's like a disco ball kind of thing, but I need this cutout to exist right there, right? So I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to choose the next one, which is minus front, which is going to take the top object, it's going to make that into a cookie cutter, it's going to cut it right out, and it's going to merge it into a single unified shape. So I'm going to select on that, and that's what that is, right? So now if I select that, you can see the interior triangle is selected as well as the outside form, whatever that is right there, all right? And I can move that around. I can change the colors of these, or in this case, I can actually turn off the colors. I didn't show you about that. That's what this Ghostbuster symbol means right here. It means there's no color right there. So it exists. I don't click on it. It's gone, but it's still there. If I hover over it somehow. Okay? It still exists, right? And for the sake of the laser cutter, that's what it could look like. It can still see the vector path even if there's no swatch on there. It's just looking for that, what that blue line is indicating in terms of the shape, not in terms of the larger square. Okay? Let's give that a color again. And so that's how you'd use the minus front. You have the intersecting one, which is a fun one. So let's go back a few steps here now. Let's get back a lot. All right, we're going to take all these shapes right here. And if I select all of these and I choose the intersecting, I thought there were two overlapping paths. Maybe I'm not using it right. Let's try that. It's either this one. That's only going to leave me with just the intersecting paths, right? So if I Control Z, you can see the shape, and then it battery's running low. I redo. It's left in with the intersecting shape on there. I'll click undo, and this time I'm also going to choose this one, which is going to separate this one out. That didn't do what I wanted to do. This one should be the inverse of that. The cutout. Depending on what you do, you can kind of play around with elements of that. But it's just actually this line, this blue line is all the laser's focusing on. In this case, it's going to cut all this out. Do you guys continue this? Most? Am I talking too fast?
Illustrator in the past, but there is some new things.
There are some what?
Shapes.
New shapes, yes. Alright, so that's how we use Illustrator. There's something else I was going to talk to you about. I don't remember. For the sake of the project, gradients are an importance. If you're trying to cut out a section of the shape, so let's say we have this square right here and we actually just want the line to start and end. Maybe it's still along the ideas where you're going to actually cut all the way in there, and then the kerf is the width of the line cut. That's called the kerf, and that's the same. So in terms of cutting on the laser, cutting on a table saw, cutting on a miter saw, cutting on a CNC, the width of the cut is always what we call the kerf. It kind of sounds like a Muppet name, right? Kerf. Like it should be like these big kind of like stringy ears and like kind of like maybe like a slothy looking thing that's moving around on the ground. Kerf. That's what a kerf looks like. It's the width of a cut. Okay. What was I talking about? I understand kerf, but now I have two Muppets in my head right now. The cutting tool, which is here under the eraser tool. Eraser tool, if I click on that, let me do that. Is my computer freezing? There you go. You'll notice that it cuts it out, but it actually doesn't cut out the line. It just kind of makes it look a little more like Swiss cheese. Okay? And so the laser cutter will recognize all that. And so if that's the way you want to produce your form, you want to talk about dominoes, and you want to make this giant domino display and have it go down the hill, it would be really cool if we all be able to push it and be able to watch it go all the way down that kind of like rolling, at least my idea. That would be really fun to be interactive and kind of playing with the space on there, and you can kind of have the positive and negative values in there. Or if you want to talk about being something related to wind, you can do it like that. But you notice that the eraser tool didn't actually cut the line. It just kind of cut out a section of it, but kind of created a new path. If you click and hold on the eraser tool, you can get the scissors tool, and I click on a path here and here, and it's going to separate out the line. So now you can see the anchor point here, it ends right there. You can see this if I press the V key. I'm going to select that path, press delete. It's deleted a section of that line right there. Ooh. All right, so now it's actually no longer, it's a truncated, and so the laser is only going to cut all the way to there, right? And so that's using the cutting tool. What else can we talk about? Let me think. Anybody anything? Oh, I was going to show my always exciting key demo. Okay, I'm going to show you two different ways to draw a key. When I say a key, I'm talking about a house key. Okay. So I'm going to show you two different ways. It's always fun. You can tag along if you haven't used this program before. Is anybody having trouble still following along or reading the program to actually work? Did your program end up working, Maria? Are you still waiting for the computer to load? Did you able to open the program? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to do a key here now. So I'm going to choose the pen tool as the first one. And so what I want it to look like is a key. So I start at the bottom, click once, twice, diagonal, up. I want to have that little turn right there. I want to turn that off. Draw a shape right there. Turn that off. Shape like there. That off right there. Shape like that. There. I screwed something up. Excuse me. Bam. Bam. I'm going quickly. This could be done a little bit better. And I'm going to create these little jagged teeth on here now. Okay, that's a key. All right. Press the V key. I'm going to move it down back into the window space here now. Let me try this one. There's something weird going on there. What is this path? Alright, so I have a key shape right here right now, right? And I can also take the pen tool and I can use bam, 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 bam. So isn't that beautiful? Key shape. So that's the value of the pen tool. I can press the A key or the direct selection tool. I can kind of adjust these kind of radiuses here, radii here, and kind of change around these values. I can pull this in here more if I want it to be like that. And I kind of really play with trying to make it into a uniform shape. Okay. Alternatively, I can make this using a series of different shapes. If I click here, that, polygon, this, I'm going to increase the sides to 6. I'm going to press Alt, no, Shift. I'm going to lock those constraints. I'm going to press V. Oh, Control, so let me go like this right here. Right like that. I'm going to do a rectangle. Sorry, I'm running through this pretty quickly to show how these things work. I'm going to make a rectangle there. I'm going to create a series of triangles. And then if I select it by pressing V and I press Control C, Control V, it'll copy that. Paste that there. Paste that there. Control V, one more. Control V, one more. Place this right down there. Now I can go ahead and use the Pathfinder tool, and I can unify these shapes. Select that, that, and then minus front, minus front. Oop. Is that right? That's in the wrong space right there, so let's go Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. Oops. Why is it not working? Okay. Actually, one apart with me. Delete. Control V. Oops. All right. Different shape. We'll do the triangle one more time. Like that. All right, and then we'll do one more, which is going to be, how to do that. There you go. Now I have my key form, right? And one is more gestural than the other. The other one looks, they both look very elementary. Anyways, there's two different ways to kind of make this base shape, and this is kind of what you'd make to have it cut out, okay? Now the nice thing about this program, again, is it is infinitely scalable. Right now, this key is sized to fill up a piece of paper, so it's about 8 inches tall. If I wanted it to be fit the size of that wall right there, I can go in and I can select the shape right there, and I'm going to go to Window, Transform, and then it's going to give me values. Okay, here the X is implying that it's in terms of an X on a graph. On the X-axis, it's 8.5 inches. Which way is X? This way. Y, it's 4 inches up, and I'm not sure. And that's based on the center. You can change the rotation angle of this. Let's go to 60, so you can kind of see it rotates it. I didn't apparently merge these two. Okay. Go back to transform. And then width and height. So if I want this to be 96 inches tall, well, how tall is 96 inches? Thank you. Jay? Math, simple math. 96 divided by 12, 8 feet. Okay. So 96, really big. And make it this big, it's going to make it that big right there, right? And I'm going to press Control minus. It's probably going to go outside of my picture plane right there. So I can make this key right there. But it's not, I mean, it's a pretty simple information, but I can have it cut that big. The laser cutter only cuts 3 feet by 4 feet. You guys can divide that into multiple sections and figure out a way to fasten it together on the back, which students have done. And so you can make it a lot bigger. That could be filled with like a bunch of different imagery, like the key pairing artist I presented last week. Fill that really big, and then you get, it's still not going to take as much information. You can send that to a printer. It's going to look all beautiful and crisp, but it's not going to have some of the photorealistic qualities that Photoshop offers. Okay. Do you need to give the demo again? I'm joking. That's about all I was going to cover to kind of get you started for this project, okay? What time is it now? Okay. I'm going to press stop here.